Okay, hello everybody. I'm Force Man. I am doing my midterm project on learning theory and maybe what one of the parts about this theory that people don't necessarily realize. I think that the word on the street about this theory is either associated with just random, just all these patterns that people drill with their students. Drill is probably the wrong word for what it actually is, but that's I've heard that. And then also people associate it with Gordon's music aptitude tests, which which have been which are helpful and they make sense from Gordon's standpoint, but have also been misused and misapplied by the majority of people who use them, who also don't, they're using those tests rather than using them in concordance with some of Gordon's other ideas about how people learn music. Because Gordon's idea about learning music is actually that learning music is similar to learning a language, um, and so as Gordon points out, there are four vocabularies of language or areas of language. Um, and those are listening, performing, which is speaking, reading, and writing, just like in our languages. So I'm going to kind of go through each of these as they pertain to music. But in the end, Gordon is talking about this idea called audiation. Audiation is the ability to think in terms of music. So right now, in my head, as I'm speaking, I'm kind of thinking these ideas in the language of English. A lot of my thinking is done in English when I'm just kind of walking around. I'm thinking in English, and I suppose I could also think about like visuals. Like I could picture things in my head, like I can picture an apple or a circle or and so forth. And so audiation is kind of that in terms of music. I can think about what how music might go or what harmonies and rhythms might be in my head, and then I can make them happen by either playing them or writing them down. Um, and so so the actual skill that we're teaching in music, that Gordon posits and I think is true, is we're teaching the skill of audiation. We're teaching the skill of hearing music in our head and being able to hear things accurately and reproduce things accurately through other forms of communication, which are one of the first things we do when we're learning a language is we're improvising. We're experimenting with the sounds of of our voice and of our articulation and our diction and whatnot. So, for instance, one of my kids' first words were "da da," and I don't actually believe I'm taking credit, right? Because a little competition with my wife, but I'm sure outside of a conversation with my wife that my kids weren't saying da da, they were experimenting with the sound of da 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 da, da right? And so they were improvising, and they were hearing me make do sounds, and then they also were experimenting to hear those sounds back, and we would have these babble conversations back and forth, and then later on, our ability to speak improves, where we're able to form words and create gestures, where we're able to communicate things that we want. And it's the same thing in music. We can play around as soon as we have an instrument, or we can sing and sing, kind of babbly ideas that are experimenting with the sounds that we can create. And over time, we can improvise musical phrases and ideas that might communicate an affect of an emotion or a feeling or an idea, that we don't need to write down ahead of time or read or compose. We can just create them with our instruments. So that's the speaking of music is improvisation. There's the reading, right? Um, we can read. We can look at a piece of music. With learning a language, right? We can learn the letters and symbols that create the sounds that make up the words of our spoken language, and we can start to read those in our head and understand what we're reading. And the same thing is true in music. We can learn what the notes and rhythms of standard notation are, or I suppose other kinds of notation, and reproduce those sounds out loud on our instrument. Or if we have that audiation skill, we can actually think how it goes right in our head without having to ever reproduce it on an instrument or hear it heard. So that's the reading of the language, the reading language component of music. We've got composition, which is the writing of music. So audiation can so that's kind of the reverse of reading, right? We can take an idea that's in our head that we might have improvised or have not improvised yet. We haven't spoken out loud, and we can write that down in notation in those symbols, so that somebody else can read them or play them, or so that we can just plain remember what that was. Later on, we might refer to a note that we wrote, in a language to remember, oh, this is what I have to get at the grocery store, or this is where I am in communicating this essay, or whatever. And the same thing kind of happens in music. So it's kind of the visual way that we can communicate music is through writing, and in music, that's composition. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I think that music learning theory is kind of obvious, but nevertheless, some of these obvious things about teaching are commonly left out. We commonly leave out improvisation and composition when we teach music, even though music kind of acts like a language. We tend to leave out the part where students are communicating their ideas rather than just the ideas of other people who have written music for us to play. So I hope that's something that we move forward to in understanding music as a language that communicates things, and that we start thinking about how our students can start to communicate their ideas so that they can truly speak this language of music that we all love so much. All right.